Marc Hendrickx, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Craig. Thank you, Craig. This is sort of a really surreal experience for me. I didn't think, in my mid-50s I'd be standing up here in Yukon talking to a group of people about trying to reopen what is a wonderful bushwalk. It's just absolutely insane. I'm wearing a Libertarian t-shirt tonight, so this is sort of to acknowledge the work that's being done by John Ruddick and actually sort of first of all sponsoring the petition and assisting. So in Sydney, SOS funded 20,000 leaflets and members of the Libertarian Party helped distribute those around Sydney. Sydney's such a long way from this place, and I think a lot of the people in Sydney really forget about what's in the regions, and it's really good that for once we've got a political party that's actually bringing attention to this area and the damage that's been done and the harm that's been done by the policies of the state government and National Parks and Wildlife Service. In terms of the financial damage, so if you look at the closure over the last 4 years, so this mountain used to get around about 100,000 visitors a year. National Parks figures actually go between 100,000 and some of the reports quote 170,000. I think some of those are a little bit unbelievable, but that's 500,000 people around that's missed out climbing that mountain over the last 4 years. That's 500,000 people that have not contributed to this local economy. So if you're wondering why, there's job vacancies, there's cafes that are closed, it's not only due to the craziness that happened over COVID, it's this insane closure of Mount Warning that's also affecting the local economy here. And it's not only financial damage that's being done, it's the emotional damage that's being done as well. So I know a lot of people here have got a very close attachment to that mountain. It's your spiritual place as well as being the spiritual place of Aboriginal traditional custodians in this area. And the fact that you're being locked out of your mountain is just absolutely shameful, and National Parks should hang their heads deeply in shame about the whole kerfuffle that they've caused here. This is absolutely shameful closure. I just wanted to talk about a few things tonight. I'm not going to ramble on too much longer. Bit of the history. So as Craig mentioned, in March 2020 the park was closed due to COVID, and it was really National Parks saw the opportunity to jump on that COVID lockdown period to close the mountain and to initiate long held plans to institute a permanent closure of Mount Warning. I got involved late in November 2020 when I became aware of these rolling. It wasn't just a temporary closure; it became a series of rolling 6 month closures, and there didn't seem to be an end of it. And I started communicating with some of the local National Parks rangers and saying, "What's going on here? You're going to reopen this thing?" And I got pointed to, the track's no longer safe. And I said, "Well, hang on a second. Why isn't it safe?" As they pointed to the chain at the top of the mountain being a problem. They'd had an engineering report that said the chain was unsafe. And at that stage I got involved communicating with the engineer involved and pointing out problems with his assessment, and in January 2021 I decided to look for myself. So if the chain's a problem, I'll have a look for myself and I'll provide some professional advice. So I'm actually an engineering geologist, and I've worked professionally for National Parks before looking at issues like this. So January 2021 I climbed up and I found they'd already removed the chain. So they'd already taken it out. They'd already made up their minds that they were going to close the mountain back then. That led to a series of FOI requests. I put in some FOIs about looking at documents and correspondence between National Parks and various entities, one being the Wollumba Consultative Group. When that FOI got returned, all the correspondence between National Parks and the Wollumba Consultative Group came back black. They completely redacted it. So it turns out that correspondence between the state government, between National Parks and Wildlife Service and Aboriginal entities that's involved with are exempt from FOI. So you're not actually allowed to know what's going on in the background. So these deliberations have been made in complete secrecy. There's no accountability in this whatsoever. We don't know how much money's been involved in handed over to the Wollumba Consultative Group over the years. They've been involved with the National Parks and Wildlife Service now since at least 2006. So there's been money that's been handed over through that process, but we're not allowed to know as taxpayers what that amount is, or how those decisions are coming about. So this matter has been done in complete secrecy. As a taxpayer, as someone who, as an owner of these national parks belong to all of us in Australia. They're not just owned by particular groups. I find that absolutely outrageous that we can't find out how the decisions are being made. bit more history. So shortly after that, the Facebook group Reopen Mount Warning was formed. So Craig Murphy was involved in doing that, and that's now looking at, I don't know, we're about 6,000 members or so. So that has really snowballed to provide a public forum where people can actually contribute stories. Some of those stories there about people climbing with their kids and their grandkids are really heartwarming, and it's really devastating to think that, you know, parents will no longer be able to take their kids up there. Scout groups, school groups. Mount Warning was a very popular site for school excursions for decades and decades. You know, there's stories in the newspapers dating back to the time when the park was opened in 1929 and the 1930s, 40s, 60s, all the way through. It's been such a popular spot for school excursions. You know, our kids are being locked out of this experience as well. One of the great things about that last 200 metres, that rock scramble, you know, for a 6 or 8 year old to get up there, for a 10-year-old kid to get up there and actually achieve that summit. You know, the amount of self-confidence, that boost in self-confidence they get from that really affects them for the rest of their life. And national parks have taken that away from us, taking that away from our kids. I just find it absolutely outrageous that they've done this. They haven't thought about the damage that they've done. In terms of the petition, I thank you everyone who signed that petition. It's really important. It just sort of lays bare to the government that there are numbers involved here. There are big numbers of people who are really upset about this. They're really frustrated and they're angry that they haven't been spoken to about this. One of the things about the stakeholder engagement with national parks, there's been none. There's been no talking to local people about this. There's been no discussion at all with local businesses. Mount Warning Rainforest Park, for instance, national parks have not spoken to the owner there at all. It's been 4 years of that basically silence from national parks in terms of speaking to other people about this issue. It's completely wrong. I can't believe that it's 2024 and we're dealing with a government that allows its bureaucrats to do this to the public. So yeah, thank you so much for signing on the petition. If you haven't signed it, get on board, share it with your friends. We've got a figure of 10,000 that we needed, and that was an outcome of an agreement between the Labor Party and the Libertarian Party. So if you look at the actual mechanics of that system, technically for an e-petition you need 20,000 signatures, but there was an agreement made between Labor and the Liberal Democrats, or the Libertarian Party, as they're now called, to get 10,000. I think the Minister at the time thought there's no way you're going to get 10,000, but we're nearly there. What that will trigger is a debate on the floor of Parliament. It's the first time this issue will be debated on the floor of Parliament. So it's really big that this is happening. In terms of the future, so at the moment, in February, the new minister, I shouldn't say new minister, but she's been the minister for about 12 months now, Penny Sharp. She actually, and a credit to her, compared to the previous Liberal government, she actually came up to Murwillumbah and visited and talked to stakeholders involved. So there was a meeting between representatives of SOS, Reopen Mount Warning and Penny Sharp. At that meeting, there were also former employees of National Parks and Wildlife Service who know the truth behind this, who know the truth behind the fake Aboriginal claims about the mountain. And one fellow in particular, a man called Harry Creamer, who's an ex-National Parks anthropologist, in the 1970s and 80s, he was involved in interviewing Aboriginal elders throughout New South Wales. His area of interest was northern New South Wales, and he spoke and interviewed a lady called Millie Boyd. Craig mentioned the wonderful thing that her daughter said in 2007 about Mount Warning. Up until 1999, there was no issue with climbing Mount Warning. This issue emerged with Aboriginal activists from outside this Mount Warning area. And for whatever reason, National Parks and Wildlife Service decided to believe them rather than believe the group that I see as the legitimate custodians of the mountain. So it's insane that it's got to this point. The facts that, if you want to know the facts about that hidden history, you won't get it from the National Parks and Wildlife Service. You can find it in my book. It's why I wrote it, to try and get those facts out there so that that they're written down somewhere, so in the future we can look back and say, look, what's the true story about Mount Warning? And it's in that book. You won't find it on the National Parks and Wildlife website. You won't find it in the reports or anything that they've been providing the public over the last 4 years or so. Look, thanks again for coming and showing your support. We'll have a bit of a Q&A session perhaps as part of this as we finish. Looking at the future, so yeah, as I said, so Penny Sharp's been involved. She's had a meeting. She's asked for more time again to look at this. In my view, I think they've had enough time. I think how long are they going to drag this out for? You know, how long can they drag this pain out for the local community here? Is it going to be another 12 months, 18 months? The mountain has experienced some damage. The rainfall events that have affected the area has caused some damage to the track. It's not as bad as the damage that was experienced through the cyclone events in the mid-teens. So the Cyclone Oswald, Cyclone Debbie. Essentially, it's a vegetation clearing exercise. They've taken the chain out. Whether or not they decide to replace the chain or not, that's a decision they'll have to come up with. In my view, you don't actually need the chain to climb. For decades there was no chain there and people were able to climb up there and get to the summit okay. So the question is, where do we go from here? I had an interview with Andrew Bolt on Monday, and to me it looks like the only way forward, if we don't get anything back from the Minister in the next few months, is mass civil disobedience, or just local civil, just individual acts of civil disobedience. So if you get an opportunity to climb it, if you go up there's no security guards in the car park, take that opportunity and go climb yourself and see for yourself and re-experience the views that I'm sure very many people here have experienced in the past and know about. So those small acts of civil disobedience will add up, and it will keep this issue in the government's attention. So the thing we need to do is to keep it in the government's area of interest. If we stop doing anything, they're gonna think we don't have any interest anymore, and they're gonna forget about it. So we need to keep the pressure on. So please keep the pressure on. So thank you. That's all I've got to say.